everyone, and I wanted to talk to you in this Victober video about the Victorian poetry that I've read. Poetry is definitely a real weak spot for me in my reading, so I don't have that much Victorian poetry that I've read, but it's funny, out of poetry, Victorian poetry is the most that I've read. So I wanted to talk to you about the ones that I have read and kind of my general thoughts. And the first I read aloud to the boys last Victober, and that is The Book of Nonsense. And unfortunately, this was a complete and utter miss with me. I did not enjoy this, and it did feel like nonsense to me, and I'm just not able to, I don't know, maybe I'm too serious. Maybe I take it too seriously. I kind of just am like, what is the point of this? Why am I need a linear kind of thing happening, or at least it feels whimsical. It just felt like, I don't take poetry seriously. Here, let me just slap some poems together. I don't know. It was just complete miss for me. Then the next one was A Child's Garden of Verses by Robert Louis Stevenson. This is an all-time favorite for me. I love these poems, and I love how they really capture the spirit of childhood. There's something so special about this collection, and I've read it 2 times over, and I would love to read it many more times, especially aloud. That's how poems, you serve yourself best when reading poems aloud. Then the next one is The Ring and the Book by Robert Browning. I read this last year with Roz from Scallydandling About the Books, and this was quite the feat. It's very intense, and it is all about a real murder that happened in Florence, and it's during the Medici era, and Robert Browning was inspired to write it after reading these court case documents. And it's really, really sad, though, because it's about a real murder, and it's a husband who was convinced his wife had committed adultery, and so he killed her and her parents. And so it's interesting because the book is not him arguing that he didn't do it. It's, here, look how justified I am in doing it. So that's really sobering to spend time with that character, Guido, and hear him talk about how it was so reasonable what he did, murdering in cold blood. So a really fascinating poem. And it's funny, when I came out of it, I was like, I am so glad to be done. Oh my goodness, can't believe I'm so glad to be done. But it has really stuck with me. So I could see myself at some point, 10, 20 years from now, being willing to pick it up again. So it was a really amazing, I was definitely out of my depth for a lot of it. So it was very challenging. I'm very thankful that I had Roz to be reading it with. And yeah, it's not for the faint of heart. Then the next one is Goblin Market by Christina Rossetti. So Goblin Market and Other Poems. There are other poems by Christina Rossetti in the collection, but the standout for me is Goblin Market, and it is just full of beautiful imagery. These 2 sisters who go to a market where there is everything you could possibly imagine for sale. And the beautiful imagery, and it's very sensual, kind of, this poem. And I would love to get, there is a beautiful illustrated edition out there of the Goblin Market. I would love to get that at some point. Then Aurora, Leigh, which I am in the process of reading, and I am behind in, but by Elizabeth Barrett Browning. This one is very challenging for me as well. It's not quite as challenging as her husband's The Ring and the Book, but this one is challenging. So I'm finding it to be slow going, and I'm behind. I need to catch up. But it's one that is, when I'm actually sitting down with it, I'm really glad that I'm reading it. But whenever I take a break, I get intimidated all over again by it. But it is about the character of Aurora, Leigh, and what she wants to do with her life. She's not sure. She's a woman of somewhat independent means, so she doesn't have to get married. And there are some kerfuffles happening where I am now. Let me just say, you're not sure what is going to happen with everyone. So I am excited to continue. I'm about halfway through it right now. Then the next one is Idylls of the King by Alfred Lord Tennyson. And I read this one for the first time this year. And it was a really rewarding experience. I'd say as far as out of Aurora, Leigh, The Ring and the Book, and Idylls of the King to me seems the most readable because it's very, very plot heavy. Whereas The Ring and the Book and Aurora, Leigh definitely both have plot to them, but there's also a lot of breaks where characters are meandering. And in poetry and in Victorian poetry, I just have a really hard time kind of understanding what they're even trying to say in those moments. So Idylls of the King is mostly action. And I found that to be really just fun to follow along on the wild ride. But the language is so beautiful, and it was just astonishingly beautiful. So it's one that I'll definitely read again. And I think it's, yeah, just a beautiful, beautiful piece of poetry. Okay, then the next one is Emily Bronte's poetry. And this is the one that is just basically a miss for me. And I'm sad I didn't love it more because I love No Coward Soul Is Mine. That is a poem from her that kind of makes me cry. I love it. But that's out of those, those ones, that's about it out of the collection. So there were, maybe 5 that I loved. And I think it's just that my poetry muscles, they're not working that well. And when I said this in another video, people commented, well, you should read it aloud. I did read some of them aloud and didn't get any more clarity. And I think it's that there's so actually a fair number of Victorian poetry I want to get to that I don't feel that motivated at this point to go back to it. Yes. So those are my thoughts on the Victorian poetry that I have read, little though it may be. And hopefully, I do know that How Lisa Loved the King by George Eliot and Enoch Arden by Tennyson. Those are 2 that I'm like desperate to get to those. Yes. So I hope that you enjoyed hearing about it. Let me know kind of some favorite Victorian poetry of yours, and I will be back with another video soon.